Golduck has just reached #1 in the world in Gen 9 OU, folks. The player UUTS has brought this forgotten duck Pokemon to heights never before conceivable. This is very impressive for many reasons. First of all, Golduck is a Pokemon ranked in the very lowest tier of ZU, and is not considered very good by most people. The team is also a rain team, and rain teams have really fallen off in Gen 9 OU. They are far worse than they used to be. Most would consider the archetype a little bit underpowered. And the team not only has Golduck as a novel and unusual Pokemon choice, but also Pawmot and Tentacruel, both low-tier Pokemon that are not commonly used. So the big question here is, why would you use Golduck? What does Golduck offer? This is a duck, which is not a very powerful animal in the real world. Golduck, however, exists in the Pokemon world where anything is possible, and the fantastical is made real, and so it is a little bit more powerful than a regular duck. Golduck is sort of a middle-of-the-road water-type special attacker. Its stats are extremely average, its highest stat being its 95 special attack. It has some fairly standard options like Hydro Pump and Ice Beam and Grass Knot that are common on this sort of Pokemon. And the best thing about it is that it has the ability Swift Swim. Swift Swim is an excellent ability that grants double speed if Rain is active. So Golduck can be used as a rain threat. Swift Swim is an ability that is known to elevate otherwise bad Pokemon like Kabutops and Ludicolo. Double speed in the rain is that good. You can get away with being a little bit average in other areas if you have that double speed in the rain. However, Golduck, among other Swift Swim Pokemon, seems a little bit bare bones, a little bit lacking. Generally, Kingdra is the supreme choice for a Swift Swim threat. This has been the most popular Swift Swim Pokemon on rain teams in multiple generations. Kingdra has the powerful Water Dragon typing, which is a very good type combination with few weaknesses. And it can also take great advantage of Stab Draco Meteor, which is a nice, high-powered neutral attack that often does significant damage to the things that water-type attacks cannot threaten. Funnily enough, Golduck has been used before in Gen 9 OU, purely because back in the earlier days of the metagame, it was the only option for a Swift Swim special attacker. If you eliminate all the competition, suddenly you become far more elevated. But now in the modern metagame, we have plenty of other options for Swift Swim Pokemon, including the elite Kingdra that has been the gold standard for years. So why return to Golduck, who was seemingly only used for a lack of anything better? Well, Golduck actually has one important option that other Swift Swim threats do not have, and that is access to the boosting move Nasty Plot. This one difference is the reason to use Golduck, and it's actually quite a significant difference. When you look at some of the things that Golduck is able to achieve with a Nasty Plot boost, it's pretty incredible. Golduck is able to one-hit KO Alamamola straight up with a water-type attack. The sheer damage from the special attack boost, the rain boost, the high power stab and life orb just ends Alamamola's existence in a single hit. You can also one-hit KO the popular special wall Galarian Slowking, as long as they don't have an Assault Vest, which often they don't. You can one-hit Hisui and Samurott. You do considerable damage to Kyurem. You don't quite one-hit KO it guaranteed, but you do 85 to 101% to a Kyurem, which is enough to KO it after any little bit of chip damage. Golduck with a Nasty Plot boost, clicking Hydro Pump, can actually KO most things in the game, or get extremely close. And Golduck actually has another really cool option that is much better than you would think. Golduck has access to the move Vacuum Wave, which is a fighting-type special attack with 40 power, and priority on it. A rare special attacking priority move. This may not deal very much damage without a stab boost, and with its low power. However, this has the very significant benefit of giving you an upper hand against Kingambit. Other Swift Swim threats will be very vulnerable to a Kingambit Sucker Punch, as are any fast threats in Gen 9 OU. Kingambit Sucker Punch is always something you need to be wary about, and Golduck, not very bulky. However, with the Vacuum Wave, you will match the priority of Sucker Punch and hit first. And if you attack first with your own priority move, Sucker Punch will fail. Sucker Punch needs to occur before the enemy attacks, so if you attack first, it will do nothing. And since this is a fighting type attack, Vacuum Wave will also deal considerable damage to King Gambit. Will actually KO King Gambit if you have a nasty plot boost. Vacuum Wave is also very useful against Raging Bolt, who can use Thunderclap, which operates the same as Sucker Punch, but it's an electric type special attack. Vacuum Wave may not deal as much damage to Raging Bolt, but it will cancel its Thunderclap from taking effect and prevent it from stopping your sweep. This crucial option to outplay Raging Bolt and King Gambit is a pretty big deal on a Swift Swim thread whose whole purpose is to be faster than everything. Not much use being faster than everything if you just get defeated by a priority move, but Golduck having this priority move to match them is very significant. The Terra type of choice on the Golduck is Ghost, and that is to offer an immunity to Extreme Speed, which is the other form of priority that could stop your sweep. Dragonite is one of the most common Pokemon in Gen 9 OU, utilizing Extreme Speed for these kinds of scenarios. You'd think that having Terra Water for overwhelming Hydro Pump damage would be the better choice, and that is considerable too. But often, Hydro Pump in the rain, especially off a nasty plot boost if you can find one, is more than enough, and your greater concern is not having your sweep stopped by a priority attack. Therefore, Terra Ghost has been chosen here as the Terra type of choice. Now that's all well and good, but we all know that rain teams are suffering from a significant issue right now in Gen 9 OU, and that is the fact that Ogerpon Wellspring exists. The existence of Ogerpon Wellspring is a widespread nerf to the Rain archetype, because it is a powerful, prominent Pokemon with the ability Water Absorb, which is completely immune to water. And Rain teams are all built around spamming Water-type attacks for as much damage as possible. It certainly does not help that Ogerpon Wellspring is also a Grass type, which threatens Water types super effectively. Now, at least a +2 Ice Beam can do impressive damage to Ogerpon Wellspring from Golduck, but it does not one-hit KO Ogerpon Wellspring. It is only able to do 77 to 91% damage, which actually might not even be enough to KO after a little bit of chip. This is considered very concerning for the duck community. And so for this reason we have the support of our old friend Barraskewda, who appears equipped to handle Ogerpon Wellspring. This Barraskewda is carrying the Mystic Water item, which boosts water-type attacks by 1.2x. This is significant because it is not a choice band, meaning the Barraskewda can switch between different moves. Barraskewda will likely invite in an Ogerpon Wellspring due to the threat of its powerful liquidation, and Barraskewda is then able to utilize the move Poison Jab, which is super effective against Ogerpon Wellspring, unexpectedly switching moves and threatening them with significant damage. If Barraskewda terastallizes Poison, this is enough damage to one-hit KO Ogerpon Wellspring, and even though this might come with a cost at spending your Terra, I think it's well worth it to eliminate the greatest enemy to the Rain archetype. With Ogerpon Wellspring down, the rest of your team can run amok and be quite happy, including Barraskewda itself. This is a pretty effective bait. You will often invite in precisely Ogerpon Wellspring and defeat them with this, and if you're feeling confident, you can even Poison Jab on the way in, not needing to spend your Terra as you secure the 2-hit KO, though you will reveal your hand at that point. But also if you Poison Jab them on the way in and chip them significantly, now Golduck's Ice Beam will be able to KO the Ogerpon Wellspring in the future. Golduck and Barraskewda are also not the only rain abusers here. We also have Raging Bolt, who is probably more famous as a sun abuser with its ability Photosynthesis, but can also be used to great effect on rain teams. It has some pretty nice rain synergy, like the move Thunder. Thunder, of course, a high-power electric-type attack, usually inaccurate with only 70 accuracy, but in rain it is perfectly accurate. The move also has a 30% paralysis chance. An incredible move, commonly abused on rain teams historically. And Raging Bolt also has Weather Ball, which is a move that changes its type and doubles in power depending on the weather. In rain, it becomes a 100 base power water-type special attack, and that is actually really amazing on Raging Bolt. One of the things Raging Bolt lacks is a way to hit ground type super effectively. But with a rain-boosted Weather Ball, it becomes so much more threatening, especially with a far more powerful electric stab option of Thunder at its disposal. A Raging Bolt that can threaten Gliscor, Landorus Therian, and Ting Lu for incredible damage is a frightening thought indeed. And Rain can really elevate the Pokemon by providing it this pivotal option. Notably, the set is using leftovers instead of the more common Booster Energy. Booster Energy is a consumable item that activates the photosynthesis effect on switch-in and then gets consumed. The special attack increase from Booster Energy is often important for Raging Bolt. However, the bonus power from Thunder deals about as much damage as a Booster Energy Thunderbolt, so you're sort of offsetting that a little bit. You could enhance your power even further and do even more with Thunder, but Leftovers allows Raging Bolt to switch in repeatedly and continue getting value out of its item, whereas Booster Energy is only usable for one switch in before it is consumed and never able to be used again in the future. Raging Bolt is a bulky Pokemon that can actually switch in and check things, so the Leftovers does add up over the course of a game, especially when you have Thunder, which can be spammed pretty well to fish for paralysis. So I think the Leftovers does make sense. Booster Energy could be considered here if you prefer it, for the sheer short-term power of it. Having Raging Bolt as a rain threat here on this team is also a help against the Ogerpon Wellspring matchup, since this is a Pokemon that resists Ogerpon Wellspring stabs and does threaten it pretty significantly with a massive base-powered neutral Thunder and also Thunderclap with priority. We must now speak of Pawmot, who is a deceptive creature, because whenever I look at this Pokemon in the team builder, I assume that it is much larger than it actually is. When you look at the true size of Pawmot, you realize that it's an extremely small creature. How could something so small be used on a competitive team to achieve a #1 rank? It simply doesn't make any sense. Pawmot famously has access to the move Revival Blessing, which is a move that revives a fainted Pokemon to 50% of its HP. This is the first time that a Pokemon move has ever been able to revive a Pokemon, and this move was introduced in Gen 9. However, the move only has 1 PP on it, so you can only use it once per battle. And despite having this interesting and sometimes quite useful option, it is not quite enough to justify using Pawmot much of the time. Pawmot's stats are pretty average, and it tends to not be that great at actually using the Revival Blessing option, due to its frailty. Pawmot can use the Leper Berry item to restore the PP on Revival Blessing when it is consumed, and then revive something else, to use Revival Blessing twice. This is generally the way to go, but even with this option, Pawmot is not so commonly seen. But UUTS, the team builder here, has an interesting perspective on what Pawmot can bring to the table. The presence of Pawmot on this team allows your allies to power through things that check them defensively through brute force. If they have an Ogerpon Wellspring, for example, Barraskewda can do a lot of damage to it with Poison Jab, but then Ogerpon Wellspring will strike back with a KO. But since you have the Resurrection in the back pocket, you can just throw Barraskewda at the Ogerpon Wellspring, get that ever-valuable chip damage in, and then resurrect Barraskewda later. And now Barraskewda is incredibly well positioned. Ogerpon Wellspring is in range of death, and everything else is likely threatened by Mystic Water boosted, Rain boosted Liquidation. This also happens to assist your Golduck, and the same can apply to Golduck. You can just sacrifice Golduck early game, resurrect it later. And the beauty of these Swift Swim threats is they're still quite valuable at 50% HP. Your Pelipper can U-turn to pivot them in, and they're frail threats anyway. As long as they're on the field and alive and Rain is up, they're going to pose a significant threat. So Revival Blessing works very well with Swift Swim threats in particular, and it also enables them to power through the things that answer them, since they can die once and be okay with that. Revival Blessing also works to resurrect the Pelipper itself. If you have sacrificed Pelipper for whatever reason, lost it early game, and no longer have a way to set weather, Pawmot can resurrect it and bring back your win condition. Pawmot itself also has Nuzzle, which is able to spread some paralysis, and Encore, which is a useful tool to punish enemies like King Gambit, forcing them to repeat Swords Dance or Sucker Punch, forcing enemy Raging Bolt to repeat Thunderclap, a useful option against any slower setup Pokemon, as you completely shut them down. And of course, Pawmot also has Volt Absorb. You'll notice that the team lacks a ground type, which is actually quite a rarity, but Pawmot sort of patches this up by offering electric immunity itself, and giving you a bit of breathing room against enemies like Zapdos and enemy Raging Bolt, which would otherwise be pretty terrible for you. And finally, the other noteworthy member of the team is Tentacruel, yet another low-tier choice that we have actually seen on another team recently, on an offensive spikes team that carried a Tentacruel. But this Tentacruel is on a rain team, and it is quite a bit different. This is an Assault Vest Tentacruel. Tentacruel is a water poison Pokemon that actually has quite a massive special defense stat of base 120. And with an Assault Vest stacked on top, it has some pretty outstanding special bulk, actually. In the Smogon Thread, UUTS provided a calculation that was pretty surprising to me. A Volt Switch from the standard Zapdos only deals a maximum of 26% damage to this Assault Vest Tentacruel. A lot of super effective hits and massive nukes can actually be stomached by this Tentacruel with its sheer bulk. Freeze Dry from a Choice Specs Curum does less than half to this Tentacruel, which is quite significant. So Tentacruel can operate very well as a general special switch-in. It's still not amazing at taking electric moves, of course, but it can live, for example, a Raging Bolt Photosynthesis boosted Thunderbolt, and then strike back with Mirror Coat for a surprise KO. That can actually be quite a good option. Tentacruel has the excellent pivoting move Flip Turn, which allows it to switch in and then allow safe entry for your powerful Swift Swim Pokemon and your Raging Bolt. That's very good. And Tentacruel also provides the team with a Rapid Spin support to remove hazards, which the team does seem to need. Poison Jab is a nice way to spread poison and hit fairy types super effectively, and also Ogerpon Wellspring. And of course Tentacruel has Rain Dish, which it hasn't used for years. This was a staple option in Gen 5 OU, but hasn't really been a popular choice on Tentacruel. Rain teams have taken a different direction since Gen 5, leaning more into all-in offense, so Rain Dish doesn't really fit. But here, you can afford the Rain Dish on Tentacruel for the first time in generations. And Rain Dish provides chip healing every turn in the rain. So you basically have Leftovers and Assault Vest both at once, which is quite excellent. I think Tentacruel is quite an inspired choice here. Full special defense with Assault Vest is a pretty nice way to round out the team defensively, and it also conveniently sneaks in a little bit more rain synergy with the Rain Dish. The Terra type on this is Terra Dark to be immune to incoming psychic damage, which is an intelligent choice. The team also, of course, has Pelipper, who is the guy that sets rain with the ability Drizzle, and there's not much to say about the Pelipper. It's carrying Damp Rock to maximize rain turns, which is not always seen. Sometimes they go for heavy-duty boots just to be sturdy against Stealth Rock. This one's going for Damp Rock. The set otherwise is extremely standard with Surf, U-Turn, Hurricane, and Roost, but it is worth noting that the Pelipper is level 99 on purpose rather than level 100, and this is to have a low enough speed to be slower than Alamamola. And this is important because it will allow you to slow pivot against Alamamola. And that means that they will hit you first, and then you will U-turn and switch out. This way, you yourself as Pelipper will tank their damage, and then pivot out so that your Barraskewda doesn't have to take a Scald, or they can't flip turn themselves to respond to your threat. You will keep the momentum in your favor. This is actually a pretty significant speed value to reach, to be just slower than Alamamola and always pivot last in the turn. Because if you go last in the turn while pivoting, you have the informational advantage. You can switch to respond to what they do, or tank their Scald on the Pelipper where it doesn't matter as much, where Barraskewda would be devastated to tank a Scald and be burned by it. Something that I have neglected to mention until now is the fact that this player has been using Golduck Rain since the very start of Gen 9, which was 3.5 years ago, approximately. And as I mentioned, Golduck Rain was actually a pretty good strategy in the very early days of Gen 9. Back then you would genuinely see this team high ladder in tournaments, but the metagame has shifted a lot. However, this player has committed themselves to the Golduck Rain archetype and leaned into its strengths, iterated on this team over the years with new additions like the Raging Bolt, Poison Jab on the Barraskewda, and presumably this Tentacruel as well, being a newer addition. And while many viewed Golduck as an antiquated Swift Swim threat that was only used for lack of anything better, this player has in fact insisted that Golduck is a meritorious being. It is a being worth consideration, and that if you build around it correctly, it can in fact be better than other Swift Swim threats. And we can see that with the performance of the team reaching #1 in the entire world. This goes to show, folks, that even if a metagame shifts, you should not look down on things that were once good and are now viewed as antiquated. Maybe there is more merit to those things than it initially seemed. Now, folks, I would like to see the team in action, and something I'm very curious about is how this team fares in the Sun matchup, because of course Sun is far more popular in Gen 9 OU as a weather strategy. With the Photosynthesis Pokemon, they get buffed in the Sun. And this enemy team is a prime example. They're carrying Ninetales to set Sun, with Raging Bolt, Walking Wake, and Great Tusk, all who receive Photosynthesis boosts. We also have the new Gen 9 Pokemon Ceruledge, who is a Fire type, receiving synergy from the Sun. This is part of the reason that Rain is so tough to use in Gen 9, because Sun is more prominent and kind of beats Rain in a lot of ways. It's more desirable to run. So let's see how this more old-school Rain archetype matches up against the modern behemoth of the Photosynthesis Sun team. The enemy leads off with Walking Wake, and our protagonist leads off with Tentacruel, who seems outstandingly well positioned here with its Assault Vest. Enemy flip turns, and what will Tentacruel do? Tentacruel stays and clicks Poison Jab. Wow, and gets a valuable poison against Raging Bolt, also popping its Balloon. Balloon isn't really important here though, since we have no ground type attack on the team, but still the poison is valued. Clicked Mirror Coat in the face of Raging Bolt there, because it was revealed that it is not booster energy and therefore it doesn't have enough damage to KO with Thunderbolt. So Tentacruel would live that and strike back with a lethal Mirror Coat. Can you believe what's happening here? The Mirror Coat acting as a shield against the Raging Bolt. Tentacruel goes for Flip Turn, dealing pretty good chip damage to Tusker, and in comes Golduck without even having Rain up, still threatening a KO, and wow, Great Tusk already has to Terrastallize just to not die to Golduck. That is a pretty significant commitment from opponent, and a good use of Golduck. Threatening lethal force and inviting a Terrastallization. Now the enemy has spent their valuable Terra resource, and our protagonist still has Terra. Barraskewda comes in, flip turns back to Tentacruel, who is taking just about 0 damage from a stab Draco Meteor from Walking Wake. Can you believe how bulky AV Tentacruel is? Goodness me. Will Kingambit come in on a... Wow. The flip turn was astute. They were trying to come in on Poison Jab, but the flip turn allows Pelipper in, and now Rain is finally up. Pretty impressive how well our protagonist here has been doing without Rain being up, but it's a smart way to go considering the Sun enemy matchup. You want to, you know, not commit to Rain necessarily when they have such a good way to stop it. In comes Barraskewda, who is still extremely threatening to the opponent, even with Sun up to nerf the damage of water. We flip turn out, and we switch into Great Neck. The Raging Bolt Great Neck, who is benefiting from the enemy's Photosynthesis. That's perhaps a little bit of anti-Sun technology. Your Great Neck can take advantage of the enemy Sun. And it's just straight up KO with Draco Meteor. I mean, that's outstanding. That's incredible. Ceruledge is just deceased. But of course, you now don't have enough damage to threaten this Walking Wake. It's a slight issue, but the Terra Fairy... Wow, and the enemy actually played around Terra Fairy by using Hydro Steam instead of a Dragon-type attack. Pretty outstanding play by opponent, but it did not save their life, as Great Neck has secured the KO on Walking Wake. In comes Pawmot against Kingambit, which is a pretty nice switch-in. You have a Dark Resistance, you can Encore the Sucker Punch or Swords Dance, of course threaten close combat. There's no risk of Terrastallization since Great Tusk has already used it. Golduck from Beyond the Grave getting value, but ensuring the KO on that Kingambit there. And Pelipper cleanly switches in on the Ninetales. Not so worried about very much. Able to overwrite the weather. And boy, is this an outstanding position for our Golduck gamer, who can simply U-turn here and... Okay, the Ninetales went for Healing Wish to resurrect or heal up the Raging Bolt, the last hope. But I don't think that they have much of a leg to stand on any longer, as our protagonist here has significant resources remaining. I will say that the Raging Bolt is a little bit of a threat, I will say so. Weather Ball does very little to Tentacruel. It's healing up with Rain Dish. Can you believe the Rain Dish value? Oh! Went for Weather Ball again. That would seem to suggest that this is a Choice Specs Raging Bolt. Locked into Weather Ball. No. No, I'm wrong. They were just doing a read and trying to catch Pawmot, who would be immune to electric moves. Forgive me for being incorrect there. Not Choice Specs. They go for Encore to try and force them to repeat an electric type attack, which would be advantageous. This Pawmot is kind of the key to winning this endgame, to be absolutely honest with you. And it is still able to resurrect an ally if need be. Pawmot, even without the whole reason to run it, the resurrection, is operating very well here as an anti-Raging Bolt fella. It must be said that this is actually quite a close one. Raging Bolt threatens Thunderclap against the Barraskewda, and that could be a bit of a problem. Goodness me. All of the Pokemon are gone. It's Pawmot against Raging Bolt, and I'm not so sure. Well, okay, actually they had Checkmate. Never mind, I'm dumb again. Because if they ever click Thunderclap, they get Encored, and Pawmot is immune and just wins the game. So that was actually a checkmate situation. Barraskewda comes in. If they Thunderclap, you win with Pawmot. If they don't Thunderclap, you win with Barraskewda. That was checkmate. And wow, Pawmot will clean it up with a couple close combats. How beautiful that Pawmot was getting value there without even needing to click Revival Blessing. Just off the back of Encore and an electric immunity, making life very difficult for the opponent. And Golduck invited Terra so early, which allowed Pawmot to get that crucial KO in King Gambit. That was a very beautifully played game, and quite a difficult matchup to pilot when the enemy can reset weather and has such powerful things to combat you. I think that it was played very intelligently, not committing to rain too early, trying to just squeeze in value from your Tentacruel and your Golduck. And those early decisions paid dividends later on, didn't they, folks? Here we have another replay, and something else I need to see evidence of is this team doing well against Ogerpon Wellspring. Because this is one of the other big issues with Rain. Not only the Sun matchup, which we've just seen can be handled if you're smart enough, but also the Ogerpon Wellspring matchup. The guy is fast, immune to water, and threatens you with grass-type attacks. So let's see how our hero here, the Golduck gamer, handles this tough one. Enemy leads with Galarian Slowking, and we lead with the Fish Barraskewda, who just goes for a big liquidation right off the rip. That's a dangerous choice, perhaps. Willing to lose Barraskewda since you have the Resurrection in the back pocket, but I must say the Galarian Slowking can heal this off with Regenerator as well. Actually chooses not to, and Glowking is deceased. Okay. Maybe the Barraskewda did not die in vain, and the elimination of the Galarian Slowking is a pretty significant deal. In comes Pelipper on the Tusker. Great Tusk makes Stealth Rock, an astute choice. The level 99 Pelipper has a decision to make here. Will it U-turn or Hurricane? It goes for Surf, which does middle ground King Gambit as well. May have been dangerous into Wellspring, but they're scared of Hurricane. Enemy goes for Kowtow Cleave, which does a pretty good chunk to Pelipper. And in comes the Great Neck, which is currently threatening Thunder and Weather Ball against the opponent. Goes for the Weather Ball, which is just shy of a KO. Oh dear. That's a toughie. Thunderclap can be clicked here to outrun the Sucker Punch. But no, they actually go for the Weather Ball, the enemy predicting that they would actually use an electric move, but they commit to the Weather Ball and get a Enormous KO on Great Tusk. That's an entire Tusker, folks. Here is the big enemy, Ogerpon Wellspring, and Thunderclap brings it down all the way to 50%. That's a pretty great Thunderclap right there. Will the enemy stay in with Ogerpon Wellspring? No. But that's okay, you've forced it out, which is good, and you've chipped it down to 50%, meaning it is now potentially in range of Golduck Gaming. You live Hurricane and hit Zapdos with a big Thunder. This rain-inspired Raging Bolt is getting pretty significant value. Zapdos does heal 50%, and a very unfortunate Draco Meteor miss is non-auspicious, but that Raging Bolt did a lot of damage before it perished. Now, this Tentacruel is actually weirdly a wall to Zapdos, even though it doesn't seem right. Zapdos only does 26% maximum with its Volt Switch. It's actually going for Hurricane, which only does 17%. They're going for Poison Jab, trying to hit the poison. Tentacruel actually can just sit and fish for poison pretty often. You see the Volt Switch only did 22. Goodness me. Okay, King Gambit intelligently switches in against the Poison Jab, which will put our protagonist here on the back foot, but Pawmot can cleanly enter against King Gambit. It does take a pretty hefty chunk of damage, but it is now threatening many different avenues of value. The Revival Blessing will resurrect Raging Bolt. Smart choice. Raging Bolt was doing incredible things, and now it's back to do even more incredible things. It makes perfect sense to bring that one back. Will you Revival Blessing again the Barraskewda? Look at that. Double value out of the Revival Blessing. The Resurrection is here. Just a simple close combat on the Zapdos, figuring that they will go for Hurricane to end your life rather than Roost. So the chip damage from close combat there could be more relevant than you know. Bringing in Raging Bolt without Rain up, just to go for the Draco Meteor for 71%. And now taking the opportunity to get Rain up on the Zapdos' heal turn, as they do have to click Roost or die. Interesting way to secure a reset of Rain. Tentacruel can come in and tank a Volt Switch, and act perhaps as a sacrifice to get the more important Pokemon in the mix. Rain Dish, I mean, every little bit of health adds up. Kowtow Cleave will end Tentacruel's life, but I commend Tentacruel for the value it has achieved in this battle against the odds. Very beautiful. And here's the star of the show, Golduck. Will the opponent go to Ogerpon Wellspring and catch a water move? No! Nasty plot has been selected. This is the reason we run Golduck. Ogerpon forced to Terra to not die. Wow! Goodness me, can you believe the play? I didn't... Predicting the Terra to live Ice Beam, Golduck goes for Hydro Pump, because when Ogerpon terastallizes, folks, when Ogerpon terastallizes, it loses the ability Water Absorb. It loses Water Absorb. You just used a water move in the face of Ogerpon and it worked. My goodness. What a play. Still dealing enough through Rain, through Resistance, and through a special defense boost. Vacuum Wave just one-shots King Gambit. That's the other reason you run Vacuum Wave, men. For the King Gambit. And now it should be very over. I think Ice Beam will do enough to this. You don't need to risk missing Hydro Pump. And there's an entire Zamazenta, but that if Hydro Pump lands, that's dead. And you have many other Pokemon with which to handle that one. Yes, the opponent just forfeits. Goodness me, folks. I can't believe the Hydro Pump into the Ogerpon play. That was incredible. The Duck has done it. And looking at the replays in the Smogon Thread, this one caught my eye. I feel like this would also be a tough matchup for Rain with Tinglu here, which answers Raging Bolt well. It may take a Weather Ball, but it can live and kill Raging Bolt back with Earthquake. There's also Sinistrar here, who resists water and is very bulky. And Dragonite, who resists water and has the extreme speed to threaten Golduck. And Barraskewda. I feel like I see this matchup and it would be a tough one, but let's see how the Golduck gamer handles this particular problem. Enemy leads with Clefable, and protagonist leads with Pelipper. Just going for the Rain early on, not worried about any resetting of weather, not a weather matchup. Unfortunately, Tentacruel comes in and loses its Assault Vest early on. Luckily, this is not a huge deal in this particular matchup with no real significant special attackers to be worried about, but certainly not ideal. Mirror Coat has just been thwarted, as has the Sludge Bomb, as Goldengo came in and was immune. So not a great start for Robina here. UUTS, the Golduck gamer. The double switch to Barraskewda was quite good there. And Liquidation is, as I thought, pretty easily stopped by this Sinistcha. It's a very high defense Pokemon with water resistance. And Strength Sap as well to heal pretty well. Wait a second. No, for a moment I thought Liquid Ooze was going to take effect, but this is Rain Dish Tentacruel. Matcha Gotcha heals a little bit back for Sinistcha, which is not good news for Golduck Gamer. Flip turn out and go to the Great Neck. And presumably fully heal off of Strength Sap, just about. Great Neck is now in position to potentially Weather Ball this Tinglu. That would be smart. Yes, astute move. The Draco Meteor would have left you in a poor position, but the Weather Ball has at least brought Tinglu down to 50%, but it has leftovers. It's still going to be tough to break this. Still going to be tough. It's also tough now that Stealth Rock is up, and you do have a Rapid Spinner, but your Rapid Spinner is pretty easily stopped by Goldengo, it would seem. I think that you're going to have real struggles versus Goldengo, and these hazards are going to get a lot of value. Pelipper just sending Surfs into Tinglu, letting it get hazards up and chip it down with Ruination. Not the most ideal scenario, but at least Tinglu is now dead, and Raging Bolt can be more of a threat. In comes Tentacruel on the enemy Goldengo. It's been tricked a Choice Scarf. It's been crit. Now getting two-shot by Shadow Ball. This is not a fortuitous or very auspicious battle so far at all. Flip turn on the Sinistcha. By the way, they got two spin blockers, so I think that Rapid Spin is never happening in this particular game. You're going to have to just live with these hazards, Robina. Great Neck is in, and the Thunder will do an incredible amount of damage to Clefable. That is pretty outstanding, and with Tinglu deceased, it would seem that Great Neck here is a pretty formidable threat. Thunder doing outstanding damage to just about everything except the Matcha. And here's the public enemy, the Dragonite with extreme speed, committing to it already. Goes for the Weather Ball. That's an interesting choice. Maybe just wanted to be neutral damage against any sort of Terra type. I would think Thunder would be a better click there, but I'm not. Maybe Weather Ball was covering something that I'm not understanding. This Dragonite, it is KO'd Raging Bolt. It is extreme speeded, so it might be on. It might take Pawmot to resurrect some allies here to get through this. We have the possible Terra Ghost coming in. They do commit to the Terra Ghost, but the enemy gamer actually exits. But still, that you have secured a nasty plot, and this actually might be enough to go the distance. This might be enough, even though they sort of called out the Terra. Terastallizing always gives you the opportunity to nasty plot there, and therefore that might just be checkmate regardless. You do have to land Hydro Pumps, Robina, but not here, because Ice Beam does get a clean 2-hit KO. And in fact, you can just Ice Beam for the remainder of the game, can you not? Well, Dragonite may not die. Sinistcha will certainly die to Ice Beam. Dragonite, you need to do 72%. You may still need to Hydro Pump it. And the Hydro Pump is landed. And wow. The Terra Ghost there actually, even though the enemy sort of called it out, it doesn't matter. Because if they switch, you still get the free Nasty Plot. And that's enough to secure the battle there. That's enough to secure the battle. It's just the free turn to Nasty Plot. Either they extreme speed into Terra Ghost and it fails, or they exit a new Nasty Plot. I suppose the other play they could have made is something other than extreme speed and just attack the Golduck. That would be a very difficult play to make, and I don't even know if they really knew that Golduck had Terra Ghost. The switch might have just been a play around Ice Beam or the Lethal Hydro Pump. Sorry, so they had Terra Normaled at that point and were not dead to Ice Beam, but were dead to Hydro Pump. This team is a brilliant display of duck resilience, and somebody committed to a team archetype that was good at the start of the generation that most people think is far worse now. Not only does Golduck have competition from Kingdra, Rain as a whole archetype has competition from Sun and Ogerpon. But we have seen how this particular set of fellas is well equipped to handle its greatest roadblocks. If you build intelligently and you play intelligently, you can overcome anything. And isn't that a beautiful thought? Golduck has truly made history today, achieving #1 on the planet, when many thought that it was a mere duck in a pond. A big duck in a small pond. Not today. Not today. Today you are a great duck in a vast cosmic ocean. And everybody knows your name, Golduck. And they will never forget it.